Shalom, giving all praises, honor, and glory to our power Yahweh. Bahasham Yahweh Shah, Bahasham Macha Kodash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders, great millstone. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect of the tabernacles of David, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, and wherever you may be, and whoever you may be, to you I say Shalom, Yahshua Shalom. Alright, I'm going to get into this video here. Small topic I want to talk about. The spirit kind of had me on, as of late. You've been hearing me talk a lot about China, mainly centered around their social credit scoring system, because it's pretty much the blueprint or the model, as they say, for what they want to bring, to here in America. Which, in that system, they have basically, well, these Chinese people, pretty much their life is on their phone, because they have their social credit score system. And their device taps into one of two apps. They go to places that have to scan a QR code, which tracks what they buy, where they are, and all these different things. They have, to some degree, facial recognition, and all these different things. All right, pretty much biometrics, fingerprint, facial, scans, and things of that nature. Okay, and so that's how things are going in China right now. So this is more centered around another topic, but still based on similar, China. Something I've mentioned before, which is the Belts and Roads Initiative. All right. And pretty much this lesson is semi based on China. A little bit. I mean, well, more than a little, but ultimately the point I'm getting to is, as this age comes to an end, all these countries, that have a fighting standing army, all right, they're going to be in World War III. And once America is destroyed, you have things like I mentioned many times before, like the BRICS. Okay, you have the BRICS, because we already know, it tells us in Revelation chapter 17, you have those allies of America that are going to turn against her. As a matter of fact, we'll get that real quick just to read it. Maybe somebody's new, maybe they've never seen, heard, or know of this verse. Well, you have the NATO EU. Okay, and if we get Revelation the 17th chapter. All right, it says right here. And started 15. And he said unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth. This horse talking about America, Babylon the Great, our peoples and multitudes of nations and tongues, meaning the other nations of the earth, right? These different countries. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. These are those vassal states, right? You have the NATO, EU. Okay, this is the which really formulates the system, all right, itself. Okay, it says, these shall hate the whore, Babylon, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn it with fire. Okay, so let's talk about the nuclear missiles. Bear with me, I just got interrupted. So okay, what was I saying? Yeah, so these vassal states, all right. Matter of fact, let's just keep reading. It says, the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall eat the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn it with fire. It's not talking about having a cookout on the grill. I mean, it's going to be a grill, a grill of missiles, all right, nuclear destruction upon America. For the Most High hath put it in their hearts, their minds, all right. Proverbs 21:1. The king's heart is in the hands of the Lord, and as the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will, to fulfill his will. Isaiah 46:10, declaring the end from the beginning. All right. My counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. And to agree, so they're vassal states until an appointed time, and give their kingdom unto the beast until the words of the Most High shall be fulfilled. What words? We just read in the last scripture, where they're going to launch the missiles along with the other countries to destroy her. I mean, America, Babylon the Great, off the map. All right. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. So doubling back to, that point of topic that we were mentioning, after America is destroyed, you have things like the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and the Plus nations, which are nations that have joined or signed up and applied to join up with the BRICS nations. All right, but once a Babylon is taken out of the way, because they're in the power seat of the earth, these other countries are going to look to be in the power seat. So you may have Brazil, like Russia, China, use those, just those two alone. They may be standing allies now, but when America is destroyed, those same countries that are allied with one another, which we just use Russia and China for example, but it could be anyone. All those countries that are allied with one another, they're going to come and fight one another. For what? For a matter of fact, we can get that for power in the earth. I think that's Ezra 13. We can. Why has it been doing this lately? It hasn't been pulling up Ezra's. All right, second Ezra's. I believe it's 13. Just give me a couple ticks. I'll find it. It's down here somewhere. Um. Yeah, because this is all. Yeah, because this is these nations fighting. Because when you go to the top of the chapter, it's basically about Yahweh as a rival. Okay. Where in the midst of that arrival, they're fighting one another. Okay. Matter of fact, we got to get that because of the point that we're making right now. Because America is going to be destroyed at some point. Then these nations are going to fight one another for the power in the earth. Okay. So I want to just get the point verses. All right. So I don't read too much. Plus my battery is low. Um, right here in verse 5. And after this I beheld, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men out of number from the four winds of the earth, of the heavens, meaning all over the planet, to subdue the men, Yahushua, that came out of the sea from the heavenly realm to this one. Tell you that in Genesis, right, he separated the waters from the waters. All right, so that sea is talking about from, out there in outer space. All right, coming from the heavenly realm to outer space to this, this inner space here in earth. Anyways, but I beheld, and lo, he had graved himself a great mountain and flew up upon it. That's that chariot he's going to be on. But I would have seen the region or place whereout the hill was graven, and I could not. And after this I beheld, and lo, all they, these nations, which were gathered together to subdue him, were sore afraid, and yet durst fight. This is minus America. All right, this is after the destruction of America, because what prompts Yahweh to pop up is the destruction of America, but more importantly, to deliver the remnant, the elects that are in Babylon the Great. And when he does that, he's also going to grab the rest of those remnant that are scattered throughout the four corners of the earth and the eyes of the sea. But that's what prompts him to pop up, the destruction of Babylon, because he has to save his remnant that are here. So this is the after, the aftermath. Once America's destroyed, these nations are going to want to take power in the earth for themselves, man. Okay, that's why we use it. That's why we were using Russia and China for an example. They're allies now, but when America is destroyed, Russia's going to want to say, "Hey, I'm most suitable." Okay, no, I'm most suitable. This person going to say, "No, I'm most suitable." And that's what prompts this fight here. Okay, and then Yahushua is going to pop up to fight all of them. See, so let me jump back down here. Oh, actually, yeah, let me jump back down here. So, I think I passed it. Yeah, let's read into it. 27. And whereas thou sawest that out of his mouth there came a blast of wind and fire and storm, and that he held neither sword nor any instrument of war, but that the rushing in of him destroyed the whole multitude that came to subdue him. This is the interpretation. Behold, the days come when the Most High will begin to deliver them that are upon the earth, the remnant, and he shall come to the, which, like we just said, from Babylon the Great and from the four corners of the earth, including the islands of the sea. And he shall come to the astonishment of them that dwell in the earth. Says that same thing in the wisdom of Solomon, the strangeness of their salvation. But then it also talks about how everybody's going to bewail him. Every eye shall see him, and so on and so forth. Because that so-called black man is going to pop up on a so-called spaceship to deliver so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. Surprise, surprise. And one shall undertake to fight against another, one city against another, one place against another, one people against another, and one realm against another. These are things going to be taking place in Jacob's trouble all the way up to the World War III moment. Okay. Um, and the time shall be when these things shall come to pass, and the sign shall happen which I shewed thee before. All right, speaking about Ezra and all the things that he said in previous chapters. And then shall my son be declared, whom thou sawest as a man ascending. Okay, which that goes to what? Acts chapter 1. Okay, because who saw him as a man ascending? Acts chapter 1. Those were his disciples. All right. In particular, I believe it was like verses 9 through 11. You can read those if you haven't read them. And when all the people hear his voice, every man shall in their own land leave the battle they have, see, one against another. That's the point we were getting to. Once America is destroyed, they're going to fight one another. Doesn't matter if they were just previously allies. They simultaneously launched missiles on Babylon the Great. Everybody's going to want the power seat. See? So they shall leave the battle they have one against another. And innumerable, in I can never say that. And in innumerable, I got it that time, multitude shall be gathered together, as thou sawest them willing to come and to overcome him by fighting. But he shall stand upon the top of the Mount Sion, and Sion shall come and shall be shewed to all men. Be prepared and build it like as thou sawest the hill graven with thy hands. Okay, and we can stop right there because there's more we can read. Um, But let's read. It says, and this my son shall rebuke the wicked inventions of those nations, which for their wicked life are fallen into the tempest. All right, those chariot laser fires he's gonna be using. All right, those rays of light, and like you've seen in War of the Worlds, and shall lay before them their evil thoughts and the torments wherewith they shall begin to be tormented, which are like unto a flame, and he shall destroy them without labor by the law, which is like unto me. Okay, so that was the point that we want to get up there. All right. It says willing to come to go overcome, but here it is right here. All right, and leave the land, leave the battle they have one against another. Okay, so if we go over here and close off our thought, what just happened? How did I get to the internet? I mean, let me close some of this stuff off. All right, so yeah, so taking the back center. The reason why I was going through all of that is because, as I mentioned, all the nations after Babylon is destroyed are going to want to take power in the earth. Now, you already have, which we're going to grab another scripture on it, but you have China, who is, um, I don't want to say closest because I mean I guess you could name anybody, but for lack of better words, we'll say is the closest. Well, yeah, I mean I guess that's pretty much really more accurate, anyways. Who is the closest like America? China China is like the Chinese version of America. Okay, and as we're gonna play in some of these, because I've researched this many times before, but then I researched it again recently, and it led me to one thing, led me to another thing, which we're gonna have to get into one particular thing in another video. All right, but we're gonna start off with, as I mentioned before, the Belts and Roads Initiative. All right, and that's what covers the point we just made, like them being the Chinese version of America. All right, because we know it talks about America being like the Prince of Tyrus, okay, and Situate on the Sea or something like that. Oh, there's another one. Is that I think is Nahum, where it talks about being uh a land of traffic. Or is that Ezekiel? Um, Land of merchants or land of traffic or something like that. Let me see if it'll come up. Which it does say merchant in Revelation 18. Okay, yeah. I think there's another one in Nahum. I think it's just worded a little differently. It really doesn't say traffic. Ezekiel 17. All right. And 4, he cropped off the top of his young twigs and carried it into a land of traffic. That's America, Babylon the Great. He set it in a city of merchants. And that's what we just said. Revelation 18, it literally says merchants, okay? Which we may have to get that. He took also the seed of the land and planted it in a fruitful field. He placed it by great waters and set it as a willow tree. See? So there you go. A land of traffic. He said in the city of merchants. Let's get this. Actually getting scriptures I didn't plan on, but as long as it's edifying, because we'll still get the point. So, I just want to get where it says merchants, and we'll jump. I want to pass it. Oh, here it is. Yep, I passed it anyways. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. And the merchants of the earth, meaning these other countries, how they are dealing with Babylon. It comes from all that trade by sea. All right. You had Trump, several times making a speech about how the nations are getting over on them, and so on and so forth. All right, because you have like in particular the BRICS nations who are trying to move away from using the American dollar. And then you have also different countries who bring their uh, uh, product over here on the shipping boats. I forget what you call them at the moment. To the docks, sell their products here. So what he was saying, what he wanted is to, if they're going to continue doing business, that you have to bring your business here in America. All right, where it can be in America, escape all those extra fees and things of that nature, and it can employ American people, which they don't really care about the American people. But I'm just making the point clear. All right. And so he's saying that we've been losing because, no businesses at home. Majority of our products we get from overseas, and even more so, majority of the products come from China. Okay. So yeah, these merchants of the earth are talking about these other countries that do trade by sea, coming to the shipment companies, on the docks, on those big boats you see with the tankers, with those cargo, whatever you call them, right? So yeah, so of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. Okay, so there you go. And if we jump down here, look, here's again. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man bought their merchandise anymore. Right after the America is destroyed, the merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and fine linen and purple and so on and so forth. Because all these are basically businesses, companies. All right, you can find all kinds of nations with the business here in America. All right, we got one here. Oh, I think it's still there. My grandma worked there, called Asma. I believe it's a Japanese-owned company. You got, of course, you got the Sandmen over here, all kinds of stores and stuff like that, vape shops and stuff. Okay, you got the Chinese people with restaurants, whole Chinatown, so on and so forth. So you get the point, all right? Cinnamon ointments, da 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 da. Slaves and souls and men. Okay, and the fruits that thou so lusted after are departed from thee, and all things which are dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. The merchants of these things which were made rich by her shall stand afar off, for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing. All right, alas, alas, that great city was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. All these what? For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught, and every shipmaster, shipmaster, the tankers that come over here to the docks and bring products, right? Which is why he slaps tariffs and stuff on it, as a threat to the other nations. Anyways, and all the company in ships and sailors and as many as trade by sea stood afar off and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, what city is like unto this great city? All right, so bear with me. All right, when they get the water. So let's double back for the third time. And that, as I was talking about, the Belts and Roads Initiative. All right. We'll probably pull it up on the wiki. But yeah, and I think we talked about this the other day. I can't remember. But not the Belts and Roads Initiative in particular. But mentioning this what do they call it? The Arctic Initiative or something like that. Basically is them trying to open up a trade route through the Arctic to get around the other trade routes that are pretty much governed by America, and that's sort of a major deal. But let me crank up the volume and let these guys get into that stuff. Good morning. We report. Turn it all up so you can hear it.
Reported previously that Western airlines are not allowed to overfly Russia. That makes many of the routes for Europe and Asia.
And mind you, now not all these videos are brand new and up to date. Just using these for points of reference to get the point off of the video.
Much longer for airlines in the U.S. and Europe. That puts our own airlines at a competitive disadvantage against Chinese carriers, among others.
You want to take it up a notch, that's all.
And these maps explain that problem. The flights just take longer, which means more fuel, more crew time, and more expense for passengers. Russia is just enormous, and the same kind of geopolitics and economics that we're seeing in commercial aviation since the Ukraine war began is kicking off in commercial shipping. Countries most friendly to Russia are opening up Arctic Ocean sea routes and cutting thousands of miles and millions of dollars off their transit times and costs. China and Russia are working closely together on a project called the Ice Silk Road.
That's the name I can think of. The Ice Silk Road, okay? Now, I did say I was going to pull it up in the wiki. If I can get it back up. Belts. Belt on, that's not it. Belts and roads. There you go. This is what I was saying before when I was mentioning, China is like trying to become the Chinese version of America. Is that the wiki? Here we go. Belt and Road Initiative. All right. So, well, the Belt and Road Initiative. All right. Also known as the One Belt, One Road. Okay. And sometimes called the New Silk Road, is a global infrastructure and economic development strategy of the government of the People's Republic of China. All right. If they don't give us what we want, he's going to talk about it anyways. The initiative was launched by Chinese Communist Party (CCP) General Secretary Xi Jinping in 2013 while visiting Kazakhstan. It aims to invest in over 150 countries and international organizations through 6 overland economic corridors in the 21st century maritime Silk Road, which it is doing just that. All right, they are reaching, to a lot of, they're doing, invest a lot of money in different countries. All right. The BRI is central to Chinese foreign policy, promoting trade connectivity and China's leadership role in global affairs. As of 2024, participating countries account for nearly 75% of the world's population and over half of the global GDP. Supporters highlight its potential to boost global trade and growth, particularly in developing countries, while critics raise concerns over environmental impact, human rights, and debt-related independence. All right, so the Belt and Road Initiative addresses an infrastructure gap and thus has the potential to accelerate economic growth across the Asia Pacific, Africa, and Central and Eastern Europe. All right, Asia Pacific. Well, I thought it was going to give it. Well, there might be a map down there sometimes. Yeah, there you go. See? All that. All right. The initial focus has been infrastructure investment, education, construction materials, railway and highway, automobile, real estate, power grid, and iron and steel. Oh, my screen's cracked a little bit already. Some estimates list the Belt and Road Initiatives, one of the largest infrastructure and investment projects in history, covering more than 68 countries, including 65% of the world's population and 40% of the global gross domestic product as of 2017. The project builds on the old trade routes that once connected China to the West. Marco Polo, Ibn Battuta's routes in the north, and the maritime expedition routes of Ming Dynasty. Admiral Zhang He in the south. The Belt and Road Initiative now refers to the entire geographical area of the historic Silk Road trade route, which has been continuously used in antiquity. And this is pretty much what we're headed back to. Okay, so a network of Asian trade routes. All right, so let's go back to the video. Let's just let him play the video.
The Northern Sea Route. This is from a Chinese wire, and the link is below, and you can translate it for yourself on a Chrome browser. It includes details of the meetings between Russia and China to get these passages open to Chinese maritime traffic. They note here that the Malacca Strait is a key choke point for global shipping, and if the U.S. Navy were to block that strait, it would be tantamount to an economic embargo against China. It would pose a lot of problems for outbound commercial shipping and also for China's energy imports. The northern route serves as another way out and in. This top-down map shows Chinese commercial and mining activity in the Arctic and how the Polar Silk Road brings it all closer together.
I think I have a map too. Bear with me. Yeah, there it is. I might even use this for a thumbnail, but this is another top-down look. There's the key right there. I guess this pinkish, bright red here is the Northwest Passage. The orange type color is the Northeast Passage, and the dotted, yellowish one is the Northern Sea Route. Okay, so and then you see United States of America, Canada, which just looks weird. The way the map looks, I don't know why it looks like that. But anyways, you have the Arctic Circle. You see the Russian Federation, Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, so on and so forth. So yeah, so North Magnetic Pole, North Pole. So you see what they're trying to do here. All right, just build that this route.
There are deep advantages to both China and Russia as this develops. Over a decade ago, in 2013, a commercial ship went from Dalian to Rotterdam, and the trip took 33 days, a third less than going around. Besides the time savings, the northern route avoids the hazards of going through the Suez, such as the risk of terrorism or piracy. The Arctic Ocean is bounded by just a handful of countries: Canada, the United States, and Russia, primarily. And in terms of length, Russia is most of it. It's obvious that the shipping route offers deep advantages to commercial shippers, but mostly for Chinese and Russian ones. Western ship operators are aware of these also, but ironically for them, the Ice Silk Road is more risky. Russia controls that route, and after Western countries seized billions of dollars worth of Russian foreign currency reserves, shipping companies don't want the risk of having their multi-million-dollar ships at the mercy of Russian icebreakers or Russian banking regulators. So no matter what good things are happening for Chinese shippers, the others are staying away. And that is a huge advantage, again, to Chinese companies who are using it. This analyst with the Australian Strategic Policy Institute says that it's a new economic corridor. It's a game changer. Now it's 2025, and the crews have learned a lot since their first trip back in 2013. The voyage now takes half the time as it does to go around. So they're gaining a lot of expertise in how to conduct shipping operations in the Arctic. If it can be done safely, it can also be done economically. And China and Russia believe they're solving both at the same time. Rosatom is the Russian state nuclear energy company, and they forecast a 50% rise in transits this year. Moscow says that the route is safer because it goes around the EU entirely. Last year, 38 million tons were shipped, and as of this year, Russia has received navigation permit applications for 196 sailings, including from ship operators in Azerbaijan. There's a 5-month window from 1 July to the end of November. In September, the trip was made in just 18 days by a Chinese shipping company going from Ningbo to England. That's faster than the railroad at 25 days, the Suez at 40, and 50 days for sailing around Africa. European companies using Chinese ships to deliver Chinese-built products going through the northern route will see lower costs on shipping and a reduction in their inventory costs.
And that's exactly what it's doing. By them creating this Arctic Silk Road, basically cutting that travel, that's exactly what they're doing. All right, like I said before, because the other routes, you have to go pretty much through American hands. All right, and so And I don't have that video. There was one I think I played from. It had to be in the recent news that I posted up from Redacted, where this guy was talking about the same thing. All right, where they're talking about they're behind on the Arctic stuff, and this is why. All right, because these people that are seen as rivals, if you will, are making moves in the Arctic. Okay, opening up these trade routes, and they're saying that America's behind, and so on. So it's no different from any other thing. Oh, space race. Oh, we're behind. We're gonna be first to do this, that. Oh, we're gonna launch this satellite. We're gonna use this rocket. Everything's a race. Okay, AI race. All right, but you get the point.
Those are some obvious benefits to Chinese commercial shippers and their customers in Europe. But the geostrategic elements are much more important. The Arctic region contains vast amounts of natural resources, including metals and energy. The countries that develop the expertise the fastest, the mapping, the navigation, the ice breaking, the logistics in and out, the extraction, they will enjoy advantages that endure for decades, for centuries. And Western companies aren't interested. This is Yardang landform in Gansu. Be good.
I don't know what this is. I don't even remember this being up here. Let me slide it down. See what else is. I can't even hear it. That's the end of that video. All right, so let's play the next one.
Irrespective of this, why does it matter that Beijing has also a growing role in the Arctic?
Well, I mean, when it comes to China claiming to be an Arctic power, although in fact it isn't, look at the United States. The United States claims to be, well, is in many ways a Middle Eastern power. America is what, 4,000, 5,000 miles away from the Middle East? It's certainly determined, as we see, to remain a Latin American power. Once again, I mean, the United States does not live in Latin America, and so it goes. So, China as a huge, by some counts, the biggest economy in the world, and obviously with a deep interest in international trade, has a role to play in the Arctic, whether we like it or not. But more generally,
that was a key thing he just said there. About international trade, because that's what the point of the Arctic route is about, anyways.
Has a role to play in the Arctic, whether we like it or not. But more generally, yes, you have Western governments, some of them, European governments, and some writers, commentators in the West, recognizing and paying lip service to the idea now of multipolarity. I mean, Fiona Hill, one of the architects of the authors or advisors on the British national security strategy, did say in Tallinn a couple of years ago that we must take account of the opinions of the rest of the world, and that they now matter much more in a way that they didn't before. But in practice, nothing comes out of this. In the British national security strategy, there is talk of, Britain's diplomatic assets in the Commonwealth, but actually there is no will whatsoever to take any account of what the actual views of Commonwealth countries are. And of course they sense that. So, and I suppose this is a familiar syndrome, as Roman power declined, so the declarations by Roman authors of the supremacy of Roman culture and how the barbarians, must respect imperial authority and Romanita became more and more shrill.
It's always interesting how people always talk about the ancient Roman Empire, when they're referencing America and its economy today. Because to the average American citizen, they're thinking that things are still normal or going to get back normal. If they think it's jacked up, it's going to be back normal or whatever. All right, to the assuming I right, but here's the exact opposite. All right, America pretty much is losing. All right, in every area. All right, it's losing. Like it says in uh, Jeremiah 51, we would have healed Babylon, but she's not healed. Take balm for her pain. Okay, America is basically losing, man, and it's eventually going to enter into war. World War III is going to lose, and ultimately that ultimate loss is going to be the destruction of by nuclear missiles, man. But let's that's another topic.
And hysterical. So precisely as our influence in the world does go down, so our claims to that influence, and its moral basis, become more extreme.
Well, I did think it was interesting that the Chinese Arctic policy from 2018, the white paper on the Arctic, it labeled the transportation corridor through the Arctic as a polar Silk Road, because this seems to conceptually include the Arctic into this wider new Silk Road, or the Belt and Road Initiative, which the Chinese are developing, which again can be seen as going back to the.
Imagine
Now, I don't know what happened to that video. That was just the end of that one. But I do want to go back over here. While we have it still up. In the Silk Road, let's see what is down here. Spanning over 6,400 kilometers on land, it played a central role in facilitating economic, cultural, political, and religious interactions between the Eastern and Western worlds. The name Silk Road was coined in the late 19th century, but some 20th and 21st century historians instead prefer the term Silk Routes on the grounds that it more accurately describes the intricate web of land and sea routes connecting Central, East, South, Southeast, and West Asia, as well as East Africa and Southern Europe. Okay. In fact, some scholars criticize or even dismiss the idea of Silk Roads and call for a new definition of alternate term. According to them, the literature using this term has privileged the sedentary and literate empires at either end of Eurasia, thereby ignoring the contributions of steppe nomads and and look, there's an even better one than the one that I have. Main routes of the Silk Road. Okay, so let me see what I'm looking at here, so we can figure this thing out because it looks weird. Trying to figure out what's what, but it's not doing a good job of showing me. So is that America and Canada over there? Trying to figure out what is what. But anyways, you see the route, okay? Come over here, and then so they're cutting through the Arctic, right? To cut through the having to pretty much travel through the American hands, okay? The routes network will change. Just look, I don't want to have to read anything I don't need to read. It's not necessary. Black Death, talking about some everything. Ottoman Empire. So there's some everything here. Routes. There's another okay, so that's the far edge of China. So it's going all over here because there's it's the so-called Middle East. And there's a huge route right there. Main routes of the Silk Road on the relief map with city and country names labeled. All right, so that was actually a good map there. Northern route, which is northern route. Okay. So Silk Road. See the same thing there. So that was the same one we saw on the map. So that's why it looks so funny. So I was trying to figure out what is what. Okay, so let me go back up here because I think I know what we're looking at now. Was it up here? Okay, yeah, that's why. I was looking at it in reverse. I was looking at the colors in reverse. Oh, now, yeah, see, now I see it because there's Africa right there and then the so-called Middle East. And so, because I was looking at it, I was thinking this dark gray was the water. So I was like, because I was thinking the white was the land. So I was like, it looks weird. I was looking at it in reverse, so I see exactly where we are now. So there you go. So it's showing you that route right there. All right. So perfect. It just showed it better in color. All right. That green white didn't help none. Yeah, the maritime route. All right. So this is the other one I want to talk about, the maritime route. Okay, by sea, which is this is one that's pretty crazy too. We see India. That's at 9. They just mentioned on 9. All right. So taking this route or not? Well, yeah, this route. Okay. So the Maritime Silk Road or Maritime Silk Route is the maritime section of the historic Silk Road that connected Southeast Asia, East Asian, the Indian subcontinent, the Arabian Peninsula, Eastern Africa, and Europe. It began by the 2nd century BCE and flourished until the 15th century CE. The Maritime Silk Road was primarily established and operated by Austronesian sailors in Southeast Asia who sailed large long-distance ocean-going plank and da-da-da-da-da. You don't have to read all that. Persian and Arab traders in the Arabian Sea and beyond. There's merchants and the Tamil merchants in South Asia. China also started building trade ships and followed the routes in later periods. So all this leads back to the Belt and Roads Initiative. Which there's probably more that we could have looked up on that, but we can actually get more out of this video here because this next clip is a little bit longer than those first two, and they're going to continue to talk about the same thing. Let's see if I can pump up the volume. Yep. So it says, imagine a shipping route that could...
Imagine a shipping route that could cut thousands of kilometers off the journey between China and Europe, avoid the Suez Canal entirely.
And that's right there what we've been talking about the whole time. Avoiding the Suez Canal. I think there's another area that they can avoid because those things have to go through the American hands, all right? And so by cutting through the Arctic, they're cutting, that out. And if I'm correct, they're cutting down on that travel time and also travel costs. Okay.
Avoid the Suez Canal entirely and sidestep some of the world's most heavily monitored waters. Sounds like something out of a futuristic trade plan, right? But this is not science fiction. China and Russia are quietly planning a 13,000 kilometer corridor through the Arctic Ocean, officially called Arctic Express No. 1, a project many are already calling the new Ice Silk Road. The idea is simple but bold. Create a northern maritime highway that connects East Asia, Southeast Asia, and Europe while bypassing traditional choke points like the Strait of Malacca and the Suez Canal. In a world where Western powers increasingly control and restrict shipping lanes, this Arctic route could give China and Russia unprecedented independence in global trade. But why is this route so strategically critical? How can a frozen sea thousands of kilometers from major population centers change the balance of global trade and military influence? And most importantly, what does it mean for the United States, which has long maintained dominance over key international waterways? In today's video, we'll explore all of that, the history of Arctic trade routes, the technology making year-round navigation possible, and the real-world geopolitical implications.
Let's see if I can take it up a couple notches, just for the sake of my battery.
By the end, and why the Arctic route matters so much, we need to look at the current global shipping landscape. Over the past few years, Western countries, led by the United States, have been tightening restrictions on Russia and China. Sanctions, trade limitations...
I was just about to say that. I was going to say sanctions. You had the tariff war where I think it spiked up. America slapping tariffs with like 200% or something like that. Which is madness. But yeah, tariffs, sanctions, and all these different things. All right, which is partway how the whole BRICS got formed in the first place. All right, sick of America and their tariffs and sanctions, especially the sanctions or whatever. But because those things kind of affect their economy. All right, so being tired of that, they got together and they started to try to find a way to deal outside of the American dollar. And of course, they haven't fully done that yet. But that's what they formed to do. All right, stop operating with the American, basically cut the American dollar out. Okay, and America's not going to go for that. All right, because all this is just going to lead to more tension. I mean, there's already tension already, but you get my point. It all leads up to somewhere or another. It leads really back to the microchip, because before America allows any country on the planet to just usurp the American dollar, all right, the currency is going to go digital. But then at the same time, everybody's in on it anyways. All right. That's why every country's talking about going digital. All right. Digital this, digital that, digital banks. All right. Because it's all, everybody's going to be suited up for the microchip. All right. Because there's another thing I want to get into about the same topic. But well, it's another topic, but it's just stemmed from this when I was researching the other day. All right. And I forget the name of it, but I do have it in my video clips. So, I'll figure out what the name of it was. But it's also about China and their, digital, stuff that they were doing, all right? Setting up 5G towers and things of that nature all over, which stem from what? The Belt and Roads Initiative, doing a lot of things there, okay? But ultimately, they're not going to just take America out of the way, all right? These countries will go to war before that happens, okay? But anyways, let's keep going.
And even military pressure in key sea lanes have made shipping more complicated, expensive, and risky for these nations. The stakes are enormous. The United States and its allies effectively control some of the most critical choke points in global trade, like the Suez Canal in Egypt
and that's I believe I mentioned that what I said earlier, liking them to like the Prince of Tyrus, who was situated on the sea. Because when you just like let me see if I can find a map or something maybe, because I can always put the Wikipedia back up. Let me see, ancient Rome's what the hell? Ancient Rome territory. Let's see what territory map. That's good. So yeah, there you go. So as a matter of fact, let me just use this one. It's more plain Jane. If it'll stop being blurry. I might not use that one. See if I can grab this one then. Okay, so it's not plain, but it makes the point. So it's not even let's grab that one. There you go. That's even better. So you see all the light green around that. So that dark green would be territory that Rome would own. Now, do you notice something here? And all the dark green territory, what does it control the most? It controls every piece of land touching borders of water, which means every port you control. And when you have that much power to control all these ports, from the Mediterranean all the way over here, all right, to the I forgot the devil name of it. You know what I'm talking about? That little choke point right here, okay, south of Spain, okay, and then everything else in between. You have a lot of power. You have a lot of say so, okay, because you own all these ports, and it ties into how we just spoke about America earlier, where we read in Revelation 18 the trade by sea. These merchants, all these companies, these shipping containers, like we're looking at now, coming in on these American ports. Yeah, they bring money to America, but not as much as they would like because everything has to be shipped in. Where versus if everything was homemade, all right, they save more, more time on this, more that, all right, because it's all about money with these countries, all right, money that's going to be one day done away. But I mean, we get it. They don't think the Lord is going to return. They don't believe in Yahweh Shai and stuff like that. They don't think the Israelites are going to be in power. So they're thinking, how they would think as the heathens. All right, everything's about business, which is about money. Okay, goods and services. You get it. All right.
Strait of Malacca between Malaysia and Indonesia. These narrow passages are like toll gates on a highway. Whoever controls them can influence global trade flow, prices.
There you go. See, look, I could have just kept playing the video, but hey, we still explained it. When you control these things, you got a lot of power. Okay, and that Arctic route is, trying to pretty much usurp that power.
Influence global trade flow, prices, and even access to vital resources. For China and Russia, this creates a strategic problem. Imagine having a major highway connecting your factories to Europe, but every time you send a shipment, someone else can slow you down, inspect your cargo, or even block the route entirely. That's the situation they face with Western-controlled waterways. This growing pressure has created urgency. China and Russia realized they need an alternative, a shipping route that doesn't pass through heavily monitored or potentially blocked areas. That's where the Arctic comes in. Remote, less congested, and full of strategic possibilities. By looking north, they're not just thinking about shorter distances. They're thinking about escaping the political chokehold of their rivals. The tension is clear. The Arctic route isn't just a logistical experiment. It's a strategic response to growing Western dominance over global shipping.
And he basically just explained everything we just said. It's just better words, because I ain't that good with my words. I be trying. All right, I might know what I'm talking about sometimes, but I don't know the best way to get it out. But, hopefully it was understood, because he's basically said the same thing we just said, man.
And this tension sets the stage for one of the boldest trade projects of the 21st century. Faced with mounting Western restrictions, China and Russia decided to take matters into their own hands. To make the Arctic a viable trade route, they created the Arctic Waterway Cooperation Subcommittee, a joint initiative dedicated to planning, developing, and managing this ambitious project. Think of it as a multinational task force, specifically built to turn icy waters into a high-speed global shipping corridor. The scale of this project is staggering. The Arctic route stretches roughly 13,000 kilometers, linking East Asia, Southeast Asia, and Northern and Western Europe. For comparison, that's almost a third of the Earth's circumference. This isn't just a minor detour. It's a full-scale alternative to some of the most important trade arteries in the world. The route has a dual purpose. First, it bypasses choke points like the Suez Canal and the Strait of Malacca, which are vulnerable to congestion, piracy, or military intervention. Second, it reduces vulnerability to United States military influence, giving both nations more independence and control over the flow of goods, energy, and strategic resources.
And it goes to show you, as the scriptures talk about, America being what? The hammer of the earth, all right? And eventually, the hammer's going to be broken. How had the hammer of the earth been cut asunder? Okay, as a matter of fact, I'm going to try to find out, because I haven't read that one in a long time. I know it's in Jeremiah. It might be in 50. We're going to find out. I haven't read that one in a while. Hammer of the earth. I'm going to get it real quick, though. Yep, 50 and 23. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How has Babylon become a desolation among the nations? And you know what I'm also curious about? Let me see. 23. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. 23. Jeremiah 50. Just want to see what it says. 23. Get the word hammer. Tapayash. I'm sorry. Patayash. All right, Patayash. Yeah, Patayash. Look, to pound a hammer. What else it says here? Forge hammer or a hammer. All right, so straightforward. Okay, with your forge hammer, we'll pull it up real quick. See, bam, forge hammer. That's a Babylon the Great. Okay, and then the other countries are the iron that's been struck. All right, like when you're forging a weapon. You got your steel, your iron, your silver, whatever you're using, your metal, okay? And bang, 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 just pounding and pounding and boom, 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 boom. All this pressure, all right? One of those hammers being what? Sanctions, okay? Hammering, the bricks with sanctions and stuff like that, all right? Even going so far as to threatening their own allies, all right? That happened, with, that was actually the current president, okay? So going back.
In short, the Arctic route is not just a shipping solution. It's a geopolitical maneuver, a way for China and Russia to safeguard trade, secure energy imports, and increase their strategic leverage on the global stage. But to understand why this route is even possible, we need to step back in time and explore the fascinating history of Arctic exploration. The idea of using the Arctic as a trade route isn't new. In fact, it stretches back to the 16th century, when European explorers were desperate to find a northern passage to Asia. At that time,
which I think we just read that in the wiki,
Portugal and Spain dominated the southern sea routes around Africa and Latin America, controlling trade with India and the Far East. For traders in northern Europe, this was a huge bottleneck. They needed a shortcut to the riches of the East. Explorers set out to navigate the icy waters of the Arctic Ocean, hoping to discover a direct route that bypassed southern choke points. But the Arctic was a deadly challenge. Thick ice, freezing temperatures, and unpredictable weather turned the mission into a centuries-long struggle. Ships were crushed, crews stranded, and expeditions failed again and again. It wasn't until the mid-19th century that the Soviet Union began to make real progress. With investment in mapping, navigation, and Arctic logistics, they finally proved that passages like the Northwest Passage existed. This early development wasn't just about trade, it was also strategic. The Soviet Union understood that controlling northern routes could give it a major advantage in shipping, resource access, and global influence. These historical attempts show us that the Arctic route is both technologically challenging and strategically valuable. It's a frozen corridor with enormous potential, but one that requires careful planning, advanced technology, and international cooperation, exactly what China and Russia are focusing on today. When most people hear Arctic route, they imagine a single icy highway stretching across the top of the world. But in reality, it's 3 separate passages, each with its own geography, challenges, and strategic importance. These are the Central Passage, the Northwest Passage, and the Northeast Passage. The Central Passage runs through the Central Arctic Ocean, often covered by thick ice and less commonly used for commercial shipping. The Northwest Passage cuts across the Canadian Arctic archipelago, connecting the North Atlantic with the North Pacific, and was historically a major focus for early explorers. Finally, the Northeast Passage hugs the northern coast of Russia, stretching from the Barents Sea near Norway all the way to the Bering Strait. For China-Russia cooperation, the Northeast Passage is the most critical. It offers the shortest, most accessible route for transporting goods between Europe and East Asia while staying mostly within Russian-controlled waters. This makes it easier to manage, secure, and scale as a commercial shipping corridor. Mapping these routes helps us understand the Arctic, not just as frozen wilderness, but as a strategic network of pathways, each with potential for trade, energy transport, and geopolitical leverage. The Northeast Passage, in particular, is the backbone of the Ice Silk Road plan. After decades of limited use, the Arctic route has entered a new era.
Yeah, that's because, as you just mentioned, it's the one that's still in those Russian waters. All right.
Of strategic importance. In 2009, Russia began actively reviving the Northeast Passage, motivated by the rapid growth of China's economy and the increasing demand for international trade. For Russia, the Arctic represents untapped potential, both for transporting goods and for accessing the region's vast natural resources, including oil and gas. But navigating the Arctic is no easy feat. Severe ice, unpredictable weather, and short seasonal windows make shipping extremely challenging. Even in summer, many sections of the route are only partially navigable, often requiring specialized icebreaker ships to guide cargo vessels safely. This is not a simple matter of opening a port, it's a technological and logistical challenge on a massive scale. This is where China comes in. With its economic strength, advanced shipbuilding capabilities, and growing interest in global trade security, China became a natural partner. By collaborating, Russia gains the resources and technology needed to expand Arctic navigation, while China secures a reliable northern trade corridor that reduces dependence on traditional maritime choke points like the Strait of Malacca. In essence, the Arctic revival is a strategic partnership. Russia brings territory and Arctic expertise. China brings capital, technology, and shipping demand. Together, they're turning a centuries-old dream into a 21st century shipping revolution, laying the groundwork for the Ice Silk Road. The collaboration between China and Russia went public in 2017 during the Belt and Road International Cooperation Summit Forum. Russian President Vladimir Putin openly invited China to participate in developing the Arctic route, linking it with China's Belt and Road Initiative. Later that year, during a visit to Russia, Chinese leaders confirmed their commitment to jointly build what they called the Ice Silk Road. So, why is China so invested in this frozen highway? The reasons are both economic and strategic. First, it secures trade routes for Chinese exports and imports, reducing dependence on congested or politically sensitive passages. Second, it safeguards energy imports, particularly oil and gas from Russia, which are vital for China's industrial growth. Third, it provides geopolitical leverage, allowing China to navigate global trade without being as vulnerable to US or Western influence. The name itself, Ice Silk Road, carries symbolic weight. Just as the ancient Silk Road connected east and west, this Arctic corridor is intended to link continents across the top of the world, opening a new chapter in global commerce. It's a vision that combines history, geography, technology, and geopolitics, showing that the Arctic is not just frozen water, it's a strategic highway for the 21st century. To understand how the Ice Silk Road actually works, it helps to break it down into 3 main sections. Each segment combines rail and sea travel, creating a continuous corridor from Russia to China. First, goods start at the Berelast Logistics Center near Moscow. From there, they travel about 1,200 kilometers by rail to the port of Arkhangelsk on the White Sea. This rail segment ensures a smooth start, bypassing congested domestic transport routes. Second, the shipment enters the Arctic waters along the Northeast Passage, sailing roughly 5,600 kilometers from Arkhangelsk to Cape Dezhnev at the Bering Strait. This is the heart of the route, the icy stretch that gives the Arctic Silk Road its name. Navigating this section requires advanced icebreaking ships and careful timing, but it drastically shortens the journey compared to traditional southern routes. Third, cargo continues from the Bering Strait along the North Pacific to Chinese coastal ports, covering around 6,600 kilometers by sea. When combined with the rail and Arctic sea segments, the total journey measures about 13,200 kilometers, typically taking 20 to 25 days. For context, a traditional route from Shanghai to St. Petersburg via the Suez Canal would take around 36 days, covering an extra 5,000 to 8,000 kilometers.
And that's a big drop on that travel time, all right? Major drop.
By comparison, the Ice Silk Road not only saves time, but also reduces exposure to congested ports, piracy risks, and geopolitical choke points, making it a faster, safer, and more reliable option. The Arctic route offers advantages that go far beyond just shorter distances. Let's break them down. Time. By bypassing the Suez Canal and Red Sea, the route can cut 5,000 to 8,000 kilometers from a typical Asia to Europe journey. Shipping time drops from around 36 days to just 20 days, which is like taking a direct flight instead of a long layover. It's a huge boost for trade efficiency. Safety. Unlike traditional routes, the Arctic...
Yeah, because when you think about it over time, like, it doesn't seem like much. It says, what, from like 20 days, from dropping from like 36 days or whatever. So when you think about over time, the back and forth over time, it actually adds up. Okay, you get a lot more done. You get a lot more trade, back and forth over time. All right, it pans out, because you might see one, okay, 36 to 20. All right, okay, yeah, drop a lot of time off. But when you think about it, when it's constant motion, back and forth over time, that drops a lot of that back and forth in the trade, and in those routes.
corridor passes through remote,
It basically shaves off a lot of time, in the long run.
sparsely populated waters, with almost no piracy risks and fewer ports where ships can get delayed. Less congestion means goods move faster and more predictably. Security. Because the route hugs mostly Russian-controlled coastlines, the risk of political or military interference is much lower. In comparison, routes through the Strait of Malacca or Suez Canal are under the influence of multiple countries, including significant United States military presence, which can affect shipping during conflicts or sanctions. Of course, there are challenges.
And notice everything that they're doing is always what? To get around the things that America is throwing at them, all right? Or get around that global power that America seems to have.
Harsh weather and thick ice can slow progress, and even in summer, ships may require icebreaker support. But with careful planning, advanced technology, and seasonal navigation, these obstacles are manageable. In short, the Arctic route combines speed, safety, and strategic independence, making it one of the most attractive alternatives for global shipping and laying the groundwork for a new trade era. The Arctic route isn't just about trade, it's also reshaping the geopolitical chessboard. One key factor is the United States' strategic interest in Asian waterways, particularly the Strait of Malacca, which connects the Indian Ocean to the South China Sea. This narrow passage is like a funnel through which a huge portion of global trade passes, including most of China's oil imports from the Middle East and Africa. To maintain influence, the United States has strengthened ties with countries controlling the strait, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore, and stationed key military assets nearby. Singapore's Changi Naval Base is just one example, but the United States has also eyed locations like Australia's Cocos Islands and Bangladesh's St. Martin Island to expand its strategic presence. The goal is clear: control the bottlenecks that could affect trade or be used to apply political pressure. For China, this creates a vulnerability. Any disruption at the Strait of Malacca could significantly impact its economy. That's where the Arctic route becomes a game changer. By creating a northern alternative, China reduces dependence on these heavily monitored choke points, making its trade network less exposed to United States influence or geopolitical tensions. In short, the Ice Silk Road is not just a shipping innovation. It's a strategic move that challenges existing power dynamics. By bypassing critical United States-controlled corridors, China and Russia are rewriting the rules of global trade and military influence. Navigating the Arctic isn't as simple as steering a regular cargo ship. It requires advanced technology to handle ice, freezing temperatures, and unpredictable weather. That's where China's Xulong 2 icebreaker comes in. The Xulong 2 is China's first independently built polar scientific research icebreaker.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about in that one video I mentioned from that little clip, anyways, from Redacted. And the guy was talking about, these icebreakers, right? It's all part of what they're doing here, right, to get through this Arctic.
And the world's first to use both bow and stern icebreaking technology. This means it can break through ice both forwards and backwards, maintaining a steady speed of about 2 to 3 knots, even in ice up to 1.5 meters thick. Beyond its ice-breaking ability, it's also a smart ship with an intelligent hull and engine systems that allow it to operate more efficiently and safely in extreme conditions. But a single icebreaker isn't enough. China and Russia are planning to expand their Arctic fleet with RC-7 class polar container ships, designed for year-round navigation along the Northeast Passage. The goal is to create a continuous, reliable shipping corridor where cargo can move even in the harshest conditions, bridging Europe and Asia faster and safer than ever before. In essence, technology is the key that turns the Arctic from a frozen barrier into a strategic highway. Without icebreakers and advanced polar ships, the Ice Silk Road would remain an ambitious idea rather than a practical reality. The Arctic route is not just a strategic concept, it's already showing real-world results. According to Russian data, cargo volumes along the Northeast Passage have grown from about 4 million tons in 2014 to 36 million tons in 2023. That's a 9-fold increase in less than a decade, demonstrating that this corridor is becoming a viable and attractive option for international trade. Looking ahead, Russia and China have set an ambitious target. By 2030, cargo volume could reach 270 million tons, a scale that would rival or even surpass traditional southern trade routes. To put it in perspective, that's like moving the entire annual shipping volume of several major European ports through a single northern corridor. Beyond sheer volume, the route also cuts costs and time. Shorter distances mean lower fuel consumption and faster deliveries, giving companies a financial incentive to adopt this new pathway. It's a combination of economic efficiency and strategic security, something traditional routes controlled by Western powers cannot fully offer. With growing infrastructure, ice-breaking fleets, and increasing cargo, the Ice Silk Road could truly become a 21st century Silk Road, connecting continents across the Arctic and redefining global trade patterns. The question now is, how far will this northern highway reshape the balance of commerce and influence worldwide? The Ice Silk Road is more than a shipping route. It's a bold strategic and economic statement. By connecting East Asia, Southeast Asia, and Europe through the Arctic, China and Russia are creating a trade lifeline that bypasses traditional choke points, reduces exposure to United States military influence, and speeds up the flow of goods across continents. From historical exploration to modern icebreakers, from growing cargo volumes to ambitious fleet expansions, the Arctic route demonstrates how technology, cooperation, and strategy can turn extreme geography into global opportunity. It challenges the current world order and shows that nations willing to innovate and collaborate can reshape trade patterns to their advantage. If this corridor reaches its full potential, the Ice Silk Road could become the 21st century equivalent of the ancient Silk Road, connecting nations, securing resources, and redefining global commerce for decades to come. To stay updated on this,
And that's pretty much the end of that video. And what do you think America thinks about that? They're not gonna like that too much, or not gonna, but they don't like that too much. All right. Yeah, like I said, and that's all stemmed from the Belts and Roads Initiative, and then the trade routes now going to the Silk Road Initiative, and so on and so forth. Get rid of all these. And I want to get one more, because like I said, because it all stemmed from the Belt and Roads Initiative. It initially. Let me see here. Yeah, I want to grab this. I'll read it over here first. Sega Edges chapter 15. And let me find my verse. Should be down here. What the hell? Get off my screen. In fact, you can just stay right there. I can just go around you. Maybe, well, okay, here we go. Right here. So as I mentioned, earlier, China is pretty much trying to become, because we talked about, a little bit about World War III, destruction of Babylon the Great, because it's in the scriptures. And then after that, it's also in the scriptures that these countries are going to fight one another for power in the earth. But Yahushua is going to come and stop all that. They're all going to have to join together to fight against them. All right. And China is the main one, all right, one of the main ones who really thinks that they're going to be the next superpower in the earth. All right. That's why I call them the Chinese America. All right. This is Second Esdras 1546. It says, "You Asia." This is the I think it's the NLT. "You Asia are to be pitied. You are doomed. You have enjoyed the splendor and glory of Babylon. You have imitated her and dressed up your daughters to look like prostitutes to please and gratify your lovers who have always lusted for you." Okay. So now, as we read before earlier, when it talks about because that's the main thing. All right. Not to forget that Babylon the Great. That's why Revelation 17, especially 18, are centered around a lot. A lot centered around Babylon the Great. But just talking about this Belt and Road Initiative, all right, the Silk Road, all right, and there was something else too, but there's also another thing that we're going to get into that stems from all of that. So once again, that's why we're calling the Chinese America, because they really think that they are going to be the new Babylon, all right, when everything's said and done. Okay. And that's why I keep mentioning the Belts and Roads Initiative, because when you go and research into that, what they're doing a lot, all right. And the majority of the products, all right, that we receive here in Babylon come from China. Okay. You got the social credit score system that's already up and running in China, which is a model to what they want to bring to Babylon. So it's very advanced, and it's doing a lot of things, and it's a lot of places, and it's also allied with one of America's greatest, oppositions, which is Russia. So yeah, it says, because you have, there you go right there, you have imitated that vile prostitute. Who's the vile prostitute? That's Babylon. In everything she has done or planned. You see, the Belts and Roads Initiative, all right, and then trying to get around it even more with this Silk Road, Ice Silk Road, also those BRICS nations are trying to find a way to use their own currency to deal with one another without using the American dollar. Okay, because you have imitated that vile prostitute and everything she has done or planned, the Most High, uh, the Most High has this to say. Okay, I will send disasters upon you. I will make you, the hell, get off my screen, man. Make you a widow and send poverty, famine, war, and epidemics to destroy your homes and bring ruin and death. Okay, which it flips back to talking about Babylon. But I want to get that real quick. Now, it also, that was the, make sure that was the NLT. I believe it was the NLT, not the GNT. Oh, actually, that was the good news. Okay, yeah, because I couldn't find the NLT. I wanted to read it in the NLT. I couldn't find it. So that was the, excuse me, that was the good news, all right, that I just read there. But I'm going to go back anyways and get this in, all right, the KJ Visual. All right, so here it is right here. Same verses. And thou, Asia, that are partaker of the hope of Babylon, and art the glory of her person. See? Woe be unto thee, thou rich, because thou hast made thyself like unto her. Her who? Babylon the Great, through the things that they're doing. And has decked thy daughters in whoredom. Okay, even, hey, everywhere you look, you got everybody wearing the monkey suits, right? The suit and tie and everything, all right? You got this, which is everybody. I can't really say it's just China because it's not just China, it's everybody. But what I'm saying is that's that Esau suit and tie, shave, and you clean up nice look. But I thought you were Asians, all right? Why don't you have your own Asian attire that's worldly accepted? Because it's not, all right? You have to accept of the way of Esau because he has the power in the earth, right? The earth has been given to the hands of the wicked. You know, some of their women, all right? If you just hear their voices and how they act and not see the person, you would think is, you know, some so-called white chick. You're like, oh snap, it's the Asian girl. Okay, Moab is all about money. You know, they'll treat you nice if you you know, you come into their store, but otherwise, they wouldn't regularly deal with you. Okay, but anyways, it says, and has decked thy daughters in whoredom, that they might please and glory in thy lovers. Okay, all these countries that they're dealing with, once again, going back to the Belt and Roads Initiative, all right? They're doing a lot in the different places, okay? And glory in thy lovers, which have always desired to commit whoredom with thee. See? And China is the number one candidate in thinking that they're going to be the next superpower in the earth when America is destroyed, all right? But not so. Okay, thou hast followed her that is hated in all her works and inventions. Therefore saith the Most High, I will send plagues upon thee, widowhood, poverty, famine, sword, and pestilence to waste thy houses with destruction and death. Okay, so yeah, which as you see, my device is about to die with the water. I'm sure I'll be made through it because we have something else we want to go into. All right, stemming from everything we talked about, but actually, you know, going to something else. But like I said, it all stems from that Belt and Roads Initiative. It's just everything else trickles down from there. Okay. So yeah, like I said, it's kind of centered around China. Excuse me. It's kind of centered around China, but you know, I've been kind of honing in on China a little bit lately because of, you know, starting off with that whole topic of the social credit scoring system in that video. We've just been talking about China a lot lately. But that main candidate is Babylon the Great. Right. So I'm gonna leave it at that. All right. Lord will leave you edified. The next thing I'm going to say, Shalom.